Hi guys, I'm Tiara Timora. This is my personal YouTube channel, and today I wanna tell you guys about tortured love, and I wanna ask, who can afford it? In order to do that, I'm gonna go back to my sort of roots in culture, specifically literature and music, and I wanna compare Ernaux's Getting Lost / Simple Passion to Taylor Swift's The Tortured Poets Department. Before I say anything else, just wanna make sure you know if I look distressed or like sweaty, I am. Southern Europe right now is just not a nice place to be. It's just a place in which you have to be very focused on survival, which is where I'm at right now. So, if I look like I'm unwell, I am very much unwell. Anyway, so what is Getting Lost / Simple Passion? So at the end of the 1980s, writer Ernaux wrote this diary, which was then much later published as Getting Lost, mainly about her affair with a married man who she completely lost it for. And it's this very hot, passionate, honest, fearless piece, which was turned into Simple Passion. Simple Passion is a sort of shorter, more edited version. You can read it in a day, and you definitely should if you can. And both are, I basically kind of see them as one. There are some of my absolute favorite literary pieces ever. And I think they are much aligned with the Tortured Poets Department, which is this Taylor Swift 2024 album, which mainly focuses on her romantic entanglement with fellow artist Matty Healy, and how she, also lost it. And so both pieces really focus on these women's feelings and reactions to them basically falling for these men, both of which ultimately don't reciprocate. And this is basically the sort of storyline, if you will, behind them, but I want to go into some sort of overarching themes that they share. And so one of these main themes is kind of retreat into melancholy and desire, that kind of takes these two female narrators away from sort of more mundane daily life, into a space of basically somewhere between melancholy and this all-consuming, passionate, sexual longing. And I want to read some quotes like exemplify this, basically, from, Getting Lost and Simple Passion. Ernaux says, "I would have wanted to rip out the pain, but I had it everywhere." And then, the cycle begins again. A sad, anesthetized day in which I can't get anything creative done. Then the waiting returns, the desire, the suffering, because due to the kind of relationship we have, I am at the mercy of his calls. And I have to write about revolution. It's torture. Then Taylor says, Dancing phantoms on the terrace are they secondhand embarrassed that I can't get out of bed because something counterfeits dead. And she also says, I love you, it's ruining my life. And what I want you guys to keep from this is, this state to be in, although, it has beauty to it and honesty to it, is rather incompatible with a certain set of obligations that you should have on a daily basis if you need to, quote unquote, keep it together. And by keep it together, I mean earn a living with urgency. You see where I'm going? Another big theme is, that I love actually is passion beyond rational analysis, beyond, psychological self-improvement, and beyond societal norms, which I think is, something else that very much runs through both. And in Getting Lost and Simple Passion, Ernaux says, I'm increasingly aware that I have developed an insane attachment to someone decidedly ruthless, insensitive, and proud. But I knew from before, these things don't count. And then Taylor says, I know he's crazy, but he's the one I want. And I would have died for your sins. And to add to this, passion is presented perhaps in a, you might say, stunted, fantasyland way, but again, also with honesty and with a huge respect for one's devotion to someone and almost faith. Basically passion is beyond knowledge or fairness. And Ernaux says, the mismatch between his carelessness and my obsession filled me with astonishment. And then, the man one loves is a stranger. And Taylor says, I touched you for only a fortnight. So there's that kind of impossibility also, and that distance. And the fact that these stories, at least at the point at which they are being described in these pieces, have not really played out as much in the real material sort of daily world as they have in, their narrators' feelings, basically. And what this, overall ends up portraying is a state, like I was saying before, of sort of detachment from more earthly, if you will, duties for more practical activities, right? Like, all of this is very much religious in a way, very much connected to merging the self with another, and to me, and as Ernaux says at the end of Simple Passion, actually, of merging oneself with the world, which is also in that way quite a religious kind of experience. And I just want to highlight how that is so difficult to engage in, when you are more, like I was saying before, when you are urged to engage in extremely not only practical but also exhausting and time-consuming tasks that are often related to labor. This whole space to be in is just, beyond that in many ways, but also you need to be able to afford a certain autonomy and a certain, ability to risk take, in the sense of rejecting a number of cultural norms and moral norms of your time, if you will. Especially at a time like ours, I feel like Ernaux' descriptions, for the end of the 80s, beginning of the 90s, would have been so fitting for Taylor's position now. Because if people had known like how sort of politically incorrect this man was that she was engaged in an affair with, or even the fact that she was in an affair, right? That he was a married man. Like, nowadays, I feel like the reaction that Taylor Swift got, where her fans were, outraged about her loving Maddie, and where, it basically caused her and him so much backlash. She was never, in danger of material struggle, and that's something that I'm glad about. I find it really, what I find outrageous is the outrage against someone like Maddie, or someone just, choosing to fight for a relationship with someone they're actually in love with, without worrying about, are they politically correct enough. The thing is, I think Taylor could do that because of that lack of material risk. Do you see what I mean? It's other women don't have that freedom, right? Just as they don't have the freedom to, stay in this romantic state, or even sad state, because they have to attend to those more practical labor related duties. Because if you don't, then what are the risks, and even the fact that passion is, presented as this feeling that doesn't need so much a daily reality to be sort of confirmed, if you will. I really find that also something that is discouraged right now, and that, results in you basically getting insults or comments about you being stunted, you not having done enough like therapy, you being limerent, as if limerence is just a sickness. You're ill, right? You're not in love, you're just ill, or you are addicted. And that's what I want to get into. I want to connect all of this landscape, all of this scenario, to what is the zeitgeist right now, and basically who can afford this, because engaging in such an approach towards romance, passion, has reputational costs, if not practical costs. What is the mindset around romance and passion nowadays? So, as Eva Luz describes She's a sociologist that I've cited before, and I'm gonna leave some links down below about what I'm gonna discuss now, so that you guys can, check it out if you're interested in the topic. Basically, she describes sort of the constant imperative of both, self-improvement and sort of dictatorship of happiness, right? So what are these? Basically, on the one hand, in her book, The End of Love, she describes as connected to sort of romantic or sexual entanglements the capitalist demand to optimize and maximize the self, a demand that is presented as being facilitated by negative choice. So basically, you don't commit, and your priority is not to anchor yourself in something beyond you, such as relationships of different kinds. It is to always self-improve, to keep sort of, expanding, to keep growing, and a career is much more prone to give you room for that, a professional sort of world, than other, people who are at the end of the day just human. And she really presents this scenario where, basically, like, you are treating your personal life and relationships as if it's a job, as if you are something to be sold, to be valued as a product. And obviously that's not very compatible, in my opinion, with getting lost in someone else, in your feelings for someone else, with the vulnerability that implies. It's literally the opposite of this whole, devotion to things like self-help, this constant sort of self-improvement obsession, this development of skills also through like psychology, or of cope through like, astrology, that basically are meant to, make you skilled in a very risky and unstable sort of relationship market, where you can, sort of develop this romantic and sexual expertise as if they were professional skills, and where you're basically always in this, competition, and obviously in texts such as Ernaux and Taylor's is just, I mean, you are a losing dog, you know what I mean? Like, you have declared yourself tocada y hundida, like you these guys have won. Like, you are down bad. You are down bad. You're admitting to it. You are sort of, shouting your devotion for not just him, but the world to know. You're just, waiting by the phone like you're sitting at an airport bar. Cowboy like me, Taylor Swift. And I kind of love that these pieces go against that sort of, quite honestly, bullshit idea of very, technocratic idea of what human entanglements should be. It shouldn't be about, like, who won. It should be about yeah, that connection and how that connection, brings you closer, merges you to the world, amongst other things, but definitely not about winning. And another point is this idea of the dictatorship of happiness, right? Where basically you are the problem. If you're not happy, you are failing at conforming. You are just not well adjusted, regulated enough, right? And something that I said in my article about this young Spanish woman's euthanasia, my article in Compact from a couple of months back, I brought up this Eva Illouz analysis. So I wrote, we are living in what sociologist Eva Illouz and psychologist Edgar Cavanas call a happycracy. What we value is no longer a meaningful life, but a life in which we achieve and maintain a positive emotional state. Good politics isn't about rationally bettering material conditions, but augmenting the population's general levels of happiness. We live under a dictatorship of happiness. So when the unhappy can't be fixed, they must be purged. So this is kind of what I was getting at before also. Engaging in being a torture poet, amongst, other things like falling for, quote unquote, the wrong man, being too distracted and not being able to keep up with practical tasks. This, even the admission to being down bad, the admission of being, basically at the mercy of these men's decisions on you, to be honest. Even that has a social cost, a reputational cost, because that's just seen as you are not complying with making your emotional state of happiness your priority. What are you doing that you are, gazing into the abyss, looking at the dark, acknowledging its existence? Why are you doing that if the whole point, the ultimate goal nowadays is to feel happy and be positive, and that, to my point of who can afford this, well, these women can. And again, my point is not, they should get it together. No, my point is, we should all be able to lose it a little. I want to give you guys an example of someone who, does this, basically plays the kind of passion that engulfs the two narrators that I've brought up, place it in the category of illness and addiction, right? Much like Illouz would predict. So in Crepacuore, which is Italian for heartbreak, journalist Selvaggia Lucarelli describes passion as basically toxic love. When she has, discussed the piece and her work around it, she's described how, people affected by this have, always brought up the idea of death as connected to these experiences. And she says that as a net negative, as far as I can recall. And I would add, Ernaux and Taylor to these affected patients in Lucarelli's eyes that, they bring up death in connection to these experiences. Ernaux writes, I once got tested for HIV, and she thought he would have at least left that to me. Taylor says, I might just die, it would make no difference. I mean, I think it is a match. And another thing that I was getting at, that I think they do, a certain stunted situation going on, like childlike. Lucarelli also, sort of mentions that when in connection to these kind of, entanglements, a sort of childlike avoidance of responsibilities. Back to what I was saying, right? Not engaging as much in practical duties as one maybe has to. Who can afford to? And my question would be to this, is the problem at large that passion does this to people, that it takes us to this, almost religiously cosmic love, almost like enlightened, but certainly dreamy space, more so than engaged in the more practical need to be done stuff. Is the problem that passion takes us there, that it doesn't have as many morals as maybe are expected, that it is sometimes, when experienced and looked at honestly, a little bit childlike? Is all of that the problem, or rather, isn't the problem that the material consequences for most of entering into this kind of state, of this kind of, sexual or romantic entanglement, is the problem that the consequences for most people are materially dire, are very, very dangerous. If that is the case, if the problem is the extent of the material consequences of, experiencing a simple passion, then why are we, treating this as a mental health issue? Why are we pathologizing it, therapizing it, canceling people over it, bullying us? Like, it just goes to show where the culture is at, and what the priorities are, and what the politics are, quite frankly. Even Ernaux, mentions in Simple Passion that it's her material conditions that allowed her to live the experience. And she highlights that as the truly important thing to take into account when it comes to any sort of factual analysis. She basically states that her passion doesn't need to be explained or regarded as a mistake to be justified. She basically states that she only wished to expose it, to show it, share it with the world. She writes, perhaps the only information that should be taken into account is material. the time and freedom I've had at my disposal that have allowed me to experience this. Even addiction, which is something that Lucarelli basically makes this to be, like, to her this is a form of, it's yet one more form of addiction, barely distinguishable from others. And my question is also, like, isn't it more likely that an addiction ensues or, like, becomes more destructive when everything else fails around you and you're only left with that? Because truly, you know, there's this obsession with therapizing and being prescriptive and, you know, basically invading women's private lives, be that with education or psychology or self-help. But truly, isn't the problem literally everything else around us? Materially, obviously, with the disastrous material conditions that I, you know, bring up here always, in terms of, you know, the industrialization, lack of dignified, interesting jobs, lack of decent housing, lack of a social context where you are embedded and rooted, lack of relationships, families, friends, lack of creative endeavor. Where is all of that? Like, why is the problem that we don't have enough therapy? And so that's on the one hand, right? The fact that basically Lucarelli is presenting, which, by the way, she also had an experience like this, but again, she's presenting it as this addiction, as this illness to be cured, this pathology, whereas Ernaux is clearly saying, this is not a mistake. This has brought me closer to the world. And honestly, I think it's the same for Taylor, or at least that's how I've experienced the Torture Poets department for the last year, which is when I got to know it. And I'm pretty upset that I didn't before, to be honest. I'm like, how did that happen? But yeah, I think it's interesting how these are opposite interpretations of what might have been rather similar experiences, especially in terms of how they felt for these women. And in terms of this being addiction, I wouldn't say, oh, it's totally dissimilar. No, it's not. It's pretty similar. It's pretty similar to being addicted. But does that mean then it automatically just falls into the category of pathology and we are refusing to, like, call it love at all? And we are, like, having these very black and white categories? Is it that easy? Really? Like, again, I'm not saying, oh, no, this has nothing to do with addiction. I mean, you feel very much like an addict, quite honestly. And, you know, like, Lucarelli even describes, like, you leave behind a lot of the practical tasks that you should be doing. It's just, like, again, like I was saying, it's with this, like, a lot of these things that you need to do, you, in an ideal world, maybe shouldn't be doing anyway. Maybe they suck anyway, and maybe that's why you're getting into this quote-unquote addictions, to escape the suck. You thought about that possibility? Because these are, like, the more dire consequences from these experiences, rather than, as opposed to smoking or doing actual drugs, which have very tangible and, you know, permanently damaging physical consequences. Instead, these experiences, yeah, the consequences are a lot more material, are a lot more social, right? And have a lot to do with how the system is structured now, rather than being inherently harmful for your body, right? And I find that really interesting. And another thing that I want to add in terms of, risk, because obviously these experiences entail risk. When you are this devoted to another person, yes, you are risking things, like you just are. The reality, though, is much like I had this interview with this Spanish journalist, Santiago Albarrico, some years ago. Basically, he was, highlighting something very interesting, which is some risks just shouldn't be there, like, at all. Risking being evicted, like not having a home, not having, shelter. Risking being out of a job. Risking not being able to afford groceries. Okay? Even risking STDs, like all of this stuff, just no point in it. Now, risking falling in love, risking getting hurt because of that, risking maybe losing it a little, risking maybe feeling like someone else has more power than you, in the sense that love is not always going to be 50-50. Sometimes it's going to be totally unrequited, sometimes it's going to be a little bit unrequited. Risking rejection, risking getting broken up with, risking maybe engaging in sexual practices that it didn't occur to you that you could maybe enjoy them, but you have taken the risk to try and you figured out, actually, this is interesting to me. Those risks are worth existing, are worth taking. We can't keep putting everything in the same boat and have this very ultra prescriptive, protective, politically correct, technocratic way to control people's lives, especially women's, and people's loves, people's passion. When actually, what we should be, the risks we should be trying to eradicate are material, not really psychological, sentimental, or personal. They are the material ones. Well, I am glad we are on the same page. I think about this so much, and yeah, I'd love to know what you guys feel about this idea. I think there's a lot of cowardice also when it comes to, discuss these topics, which is why I am so glad that there is such a big, like that the torture poets department is so big, and that Lana Del Rey exists, and Taylor Swift, obviously. I don't love everything from them, but I do love quite a lot. Obviously, Annie Ernaux is, these two texts, this 1/2 texts, depending on how you see them, are fundamental to me. I have been, like, literally obsessed since I found out about them. And I see the threat to Taylor and Lana, to be honest. And if you wanna laugh at me, think I'm an idiot and have bad taste, great, please feel free, go ahead. I don't give a shit. But I do wanna hear opinions. I am open to that. I'm just probably not gonna change mine. I wanna spill some tea and say, before I end this, that women, we get mocked. I feel like there's so much. Like, I feel like there's this tendency lately to like, whew, yes, we have found a way to keep being misogynistic while also being politically correct. You're a white, cis woman? Yes, we are coming for you, like, in such an excited manner. Like, we couldn't wait to find a profile, a kind of woman that we could still, just go for and nobody will tell us anything. Yeah, white cis women, basically. Especially if you are very much into men. Lana kind of talked about this a little in her post, which I honestly enjoyed. And basically, I want to say, on the one hand, I think, there is, and I've said this before, there is far too much rationalization of personal private life and far too much emotional, witness accounting of politics. I think we are really doing things the other way around as they should be. But even as I think that there are, these arenas of life, such as the ones portrayed in the texts that I brought up today, that are, almost religious, that have this blend between being extremely human, but also magical in their own way, and sort of, godly and religious. At the same time, I think there's like this, wonderful explosion. And I think that is, not often the most rational of experiences, let's face it. But there is, this human sort of, basis of reason, ingenuity, insight that still lingers even in those realms, I think. And I want to give you an example, right? Because women, we get mocked for, picking the wrong guys, whatever, such as in these instances, having bad taste, being toxic, whatever. Women are no idiots. Like, I'm gonna give you guys an example just for you to see how subtle sometimes things can be. Once upon a time, it was summer. Was unfortunately summer, much like right now. And I was over fucking hating. Like, it was awful. I eat often more than I would like in the summer because I don't want to, disappear. But also it's too hot. Like, I don't really have an appetite. So I, try my best to eat as much as I can. And I was surrounded, let's say, by a number of people. Out of all of these people, all but one told me the same thing. Come on, eat more. Come on, you don't eat. You don't eat. Come on, you need to eat more. Come on, you're too skinny. First of all, I'm not. But let's say you have good intentions. I struggle to believe that, first of all. But let's also say you are saying that kind of shit whilst also, kind of being into me and like trying to like hit on me, or, having an interest that might or might not be fulfilled. Spoiler, it's not gonna be fulfilled. As in, I won't be interested. And why? Why, you ask? Well, first of all, stop nagging women. It don't work. But also, you are literally positioning yourself with the older women in my family. Or just, your typical jealous woman in general. The other person, the one person who at the time didn't make a comment like that, we were having dinner and I was clearly so full. And basically he was like, look, I know you're like making an effort. You said you wanted to eat half of the plate. You have eaten half. You've done really well. You genuinely look like you're like struggling to breathe because you're that hot in this god-awful weather. Let me just get you some water. Just drink some water. You'll feel better. You've done well. You're good. Stop. Like, you don't need to keep trying to eat this. You're okay. So something so subtle. I don't know if you see where I'm going, but whereas this one person is clearly, a lot more daddy-like, all of the others are either an older woman, an older Southern European woman, probably a Southern European grandma, or they kind of seem gay. And for idiots out there, I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with being gay. You might have issues though if you seem gay whilst trying to hit on a straight woman. That might be a problem because the straight woman probably is not into men who she's gonna get the sense are gay because she's gonna need a straight man. Because my point is like this, and this goes for these misogynistic campaigns against like Margot Robbie or like Sydney Sweeney, where like Margot Robbie was suddenly mid, Jesus Christ, or like Sydney Sweeney was trending for being ugly, or Bella Hadid is suddenly like has like this extreme eating disorder, and it's like, you guys, you seem so gay. Like, I mean, you see these women, first thing you think is that they're mid, they're ugly, or they're too skinny. I mean, have you seen that? Like, truly, like, to be honest, same goes for me. Like, you see me, and the first thought that comes to mind is, oh, too skinny. Seriously. I mean, no offense, but there are other elements that you could have noticed if you didn't appear gay. And I mean, what would be a third option? Oh, you don't know how women's bodies work. Because I mean, you assume I don't eat when actually I eat even more than I would want to in the summer months. I mean, kind of shows you don't really know how women's bodies work. It's also not very hot. That is to say, I mean, obviously, just to clarify, in case it wasn't clear enough, guess who I was into? Which of these two camps do you think I, was down bad for? Obviously, the latter. And this is just to say, sometimes things will be very subtle, but women are no idiots. Women are no idiots. It's just one example, but and I'm not saying, oh yeah, it's actually even that is rational. No, but there are, subtle points where it's not so idiotic or out of the realm of the fair enough, if you will, as one might think. Matty Healy is a very hot person, let me tell you. He's a very hot person. And I'm truly like, what shocks me is that people don't get that. Like, you guys just have bad taste, maybe. I don't know, but again, it's like such an opportunity to like mock a woman for it's not a choice, but again, like a tendency, you know, being into someone rather than someone else, where like people are like, oh wow, how can it make sense? How, to me, what doesn't make sense is that these men don't react to something so like beautiful as torture poets. It's like, man, you still are not calling her. I don't get, but yeah, women's taste, I'm really sick and tired of the constant hate for it. Like, you guys are, I don't know, maybe just jealous, I don't even know. It's just, yeah, there is some sense, even where you think, where it might appear to you wrongly, that there isn't. So yeah, I just wanna end by saying that one thing that is very much connected to everything else that I love about this text is how unafraid these women are to look into the dark, whether that's the tragedy of loving someone a lot more than they love you, or just the tragedy of, you know, having to be separated from them for external reasons, the darkness of, yeah, being ostracized and bullied for loving someone that isn't, you know, what people deem correct right now, and how brave that is also, and yeah, basically gazing into all of that darkness, all of that tragedy, without, you know, just doing the I'm over it thing, which is a lot more convenient in many ways, or not just the I'm over it thing, but the now I'm into like healthy love kind of, you know, Selena Gomez, Benny Blanco interview round kind of thing, which is, I find, always less honest than the type of text where you are just bleeding on the page, and you are Notre Dame and you are burning, and you know that you are. It's not like you have low self-esteem. It's not that you are, again, an idiot. No, you are just in a tragic situation, but you're beautiful and you probably know it, and you can only look at the fire burn, and just, you know, leaving you in pieces, and like just counting on your bones with everything else possibly stripped away, but also, yeah, in a tragic, beautiful manner. One thing doesn't negate the other. Some of the most beautiful, you know, texts and pieces of art and pieces of music and history are tragedy, and I'm just scared that we are losing that, when actually I struggle to believe that like any of our lives is gonna be all positive and that tragedy isn't gonna touch us. The opposite, I think it's more likely than not that it will. And instead of seeing it as like a weakness, we should, you know, try to look at it in the face and not think that we are less valuable, less, you know, winners for going through it. As for who we love, I'm gonna end with Brecht's poem. It reads, I love it. I love this poem. I found it, I think like 2 years ago, and I've been obsessed ever since. I want to go with the one I love. I do not want to calculate the cost. I do not want to think about whether it's good. I do not want to know whether he loves me. I want to go with whom I love. And the thing is, in order to be able to not calculate the cost, in order to not have to think about whether people are gonna, react a certain way if they think they're no good, you need for material conditions to be a guarantee. And we are at the exact opposite end of that. And I'm afraid that is the bigger problem here. Not the fact that we are down bad or who we're down bad for, but the fact that being down bad can cost you everything, because nothing is guaranteed. Nothing. So yeah, that was it for today. Thanks guys for listening to me. Let me know if you enjoyed this kind of more cultural analysis, and I'll be back here very soon.